Hi, good after Friday noon, everybody. Happy Friday. This is Marla, and I'm with 9 Health. Today, we are back here at the Cook Street School for Culinary Arts, and we have been doing a whole series of how to cook healthy. And we've cooked some great recipes for your heart health, for prevention of diabetes. And we're gonna go on next Friday to talk about a really important topic, which is how to cook for brain health, so to avoid dementia and Alzheimer's. But we're bringing you a special segment today, and we're joined here by Chef Sam Friedman. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're one of the chefs here at Cook
am.
Street, so if I took a class, I might take the class from you.
You certainly would.
That would be yummy. So anyway, we are really wanting to talk to you today about, we've been talking about how to cook healthy. But one of the things we realized is, what if you don't know the skills you need to be able to cook all these vegetables, and to, what are the techniques that would make it healthier and easier? So that's where Chef Sam comes in. And he's gonna show us how to do that. Again, we are lucky to be here in your kitchen at the Cook Street School of Culinary Arts. And you guys you've been here since 1999, and you do professional classes, but you also do recreational classes for people like you.
Correct.
Yeah, and a lot of fun classes I saw on the board.
They are all super exciting. I mean, our cuisine covers, it really runs the gamut, and we really get to explore the world through that something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but today we're gonna do something pretty basic for you, but maybe not for me. So we're gonna talk a little bit about knife skills and how to cut some of these vegetables. So a lot of our recipes start with onions, garlic, and some vegetables. So you're gonna tell us a little bit about what we need to know. And the first thing you told me that surprised me was I only need one knife.
Truly, a good chef's knife will do absolutely anything that you need it to in the kitchen.
And it might look something like this.
And it might, yeah, that is what a standard Western style chef's knife looks like, about 8 inches, a rough normal range, I would say, for professional and for home cooks, but chef's knife can range all the way from around 6 inches up to 10, sometimes 12, 14 inches, depending on the use.
Now, I have knives that are like this, but then some like little thin ones, and some ones that are kind of really short, like a paring knife.
Right.
And I have one that's kind of serrated, like it has like little. And sometimes I use all those, but
yeah.
You're telling me I don't need to.
I don't think so, because the biggest issue where you run into needing a serrated knife is when your knife isn't sharp anymore. That's why serrated knives were created, is because they stay sharper much longer. But they tear into a tomato per se, as opposed to a sharp knife, which easily cuts through, leaving you with a much prettier, nicer, cleaner looking cut.
All right, well, we're going to get more into that today, because we also have this device, and this is not a sharpener, just so you know.
No, it's not. This is a honing rod.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about this device that's called a honing rod. But first, let's get into the vegetables.
Sounds good.
We've got some onion here, and you're going to tell us a little bit about 2 ways we might cut this.
Exactly.
And you were telling me a little bit about it doesn't maybe make all that much difference in your recipe, so it's more a matter of preference.
Yeah, preference or presentation, or maybe just even what the recipe asks you for. Having that knowledge will allow you to process that vegetable in whatever way you'd like to.
Okay, most of us know what maybe diced is, but
yeah.
What about julienne? How do I do that?
So if you want to julienne something, so julienne is a matchstick per se. It's 1/8 of an inch thick by 2 inches by 1/8 of an inch wide.
Oh boy.
So, very thin. And so for an onion, when we have something round, first of all, the first thing we always want to do is make it flat, so that it stays balanced on the cutting board. And with an onion, we always want to keep the root on, and the top we don't really care about. This is what keeps all the layers together. So if we remove that, everything starts to go everywhere. We keep a lot more control and balance by keeping those layers attached.
Okay, good
so
tip.
First, obviously, knife skills are important for safety. You either want to hold the handle itself or the metal. The one thing you want to steer away from is putting your finger on top, just because if your finger slips, the knife moves, and you lose your precision as well as safety is jeopardized. So we're going to take off the top of the onion. Now we have something much flatter to work with. I want to cut through the root, but still keeping it on.
I see. I wondered how you were going to do that.
And now this is actually the stage where I peel my onion. It's just much easier to do it at this stage.
I think so, isn't it?
You can take off one of the layers.
Okay, we're taking off a layer.
And I'm not really worried because this isn't really waste per se. We're gonna hold on to that, and we're gonna save our scraps and use it for vegetable
more
stock.
than I did. Should I have taken off more?
No, that's okay. As long as we have usable onion, we're good to go.
Okay, so this is all stuff we don't want.
Correct.
Okay.
So now, for a julienne onion, I'm gonna break what I just said, and we're gonna take off the bottom.
Uh-oh.
But that's okay for that. For a diced onion, we'll leave it on. Because an onion is round, if I just cut down on the straight end of it, I'm gonna end up with a piece that looks like this, which is not at all a julienne. But if I angle my knife,
this is how mine look, probably.
it's an edible onion for sure. But knife skills too, we want to process them all to this as similar of a size as possible.
Okay, so what
I
are we
want
supposed to do?
Angle my knife to follow and mimic the shape of the round onion. So I'm going to start in at an angle, keeping my knife, and gradually bringing my knife up and perpendicular to the cutting board as I find that shape with the onion.
Pretty cool.
Once it gets uncomfortable, I'm going to drop that onion down to its side and do the same thing starting at an angle again on the end. Work all the way around.
I actually did not know this. I would have cut straight. So, learn something new today.
Much similar
Look at that. That's
shaped
great.
julienne onions.
That's great. Now, when would you use this, a recipe that you like, that you use a julienne onion?
Whenever I am caramelizing onions, I always start with the julienne.
Okay.
I just like how much surface area is present. It just starts the onions cooking faster, and more surface area means more place for it to get brown and caramelized and yummy.
Yeah. So that's a great tip. So you would use this if you were making caramelized onions. A lot of recipes call for that. If you guys are out there and you're like me and you have questions that you want to ask Chef Sam, go ahead and ask us and we'll quiz him for it. And we'll put this on the Facebook feed so that we can all learn together. So important to know these things so that you can actually make these healthy recipes. We use a lot of vegetables.
Awesome.
That's great. So how do you, tell me about caramelizing, because maybe we don't know about that either.
So always happens low and slow.
Low and slow.
Develop that natural sugar that's present in the onions through cooking it slowly and developing what's called a fond on the bottom of the pan. Those are those delicious brown bits that we want to be present in the food. And so what we do is we let our onions sit until that brown forms. We deglaze using any form of liquid. Stock, wine, water is also an option. And then we stir it around to pick up that brown and incorporate it. And through several iterations of deglazing and building fond, we get caramelized onions. The easiest way to do it at home, if you have a slow cooker, put all your julienne onions in it, little bit of oil, little salt, let it go on low for 8 hours. Beautiful caramelized onions, zero labor involved.
That's a great tip. I wouldn't have done that. So good. Okay, so then you're going to show us on this half
how to dice it.
Yeah, how are we going to dice that?
So,
maybe I'm doing that wrong too.
The best way to dice an onion is through a series of 3 cuts that we get 3 sides of our cube.
Okay.
So first we're going to go horizontally through the onion. So I want to start and bring my onion close to my cutting, to the edge of my cutting board so my knife can stay flat. If it's up here, my finger gets in the way and my knife has to be angled to get in. This way I can keep much straighter lines.
Onion placement is key.
Crucial. So I'm going to start and I want to push and pull with my knife instead of sawing. The more I saw, the more I'm going to be breaking into those volatile oils in the onion that are going to make me cry. Truly the best way to not cry from cutting an onion is a sharp knife as well. So once I've got my layers through that first side, not going through the end of the onion, still having all my layers intact, I'm going to do the same thing across. And to get a small dice, I want to do as best to my ability to get 1/4 of an inch in between each of these cuts, because a small dice is 1/4 of an inch cube. Once I have all my onion cut that way, I'm going to come across once more, and that is going to give me
You didn't let me try this, and I don't blame you. That's awesome. Look how even that is. Yeah, that's great. And we're not crying here either.
No. Yes. Happy as.
So when would you use a diced onion versus the julienne?
So, you know, mirepoix base, which is celery, carrot, and onion. Great base for most soups, sauces. I like to start with the dice. I love making homemade chicken noodle soup, and I always process my onion, my carrot, and my celery into a dice, and I just lightly cook them and then add them to my soup at the end. And those little beautiful squares in there just look lovely.
Yeah, it's a good soup stock. Now, would you ever dice a larger piece at all for any reason?
Of course. Yeah, depending, like last night we made kebabs, and so if I wanted, this wouldn't really fit on a wooden skewer per se, so I would just process my onion to a much larger dice.
You do the same thing, only bigger.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just larger spaces in between my cuts.
So that's good. I mean, kebabs would be healthy. You can imagine, a nice piece of chicken breast with peppers and onions and mushrooms maybe. That would be really healthy.
Someone's asking about using dill weed. Do you like using dill weed? They're saying many don't like using dill weed.
Just in general? I mean, dill is definitely
a flavor.
Dill is a potent flavor. I actually had a conversation with one of my fellow chefs about dill, and that it doesn't find a home in really a broad definition of cuisine, but certainly on something like salmon, or with things that, I really like dill mustards. Yeah, and the dill fronds as well are beautiful on a plate and also can complement flavor nicely as well.
That was from Kenton.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. That's a great question. I wouldn't necessarily know how to use dill either. So salmon is a good tip for me.
Absolutely. Pickling, of course.
Pickling dill?
Well, you're using dill to pickle and flavor.
That's right. Dill pickles.
That's where the name comes from.
All right. Okay, moving on. You're going to talk a little bit about the garlic. So that also is in a lot of our healthy recipes, and it does have a lot of flavor.
Yes, it does. So,
how do we do this?
So we can process raw garlic simply by peeling it.
Okay, I'll help you, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This just doesn't look that easy, though.
It's not that easy. It's time intensive.
Is there any easier way?
Yeah, there is. So we can sit here and we can peel it, and once it's peeled, we'll remove the bottom.
Okay, I did it.
And just, we want to finely process it really as small as we can.
So you would never have a big chunk of garlic, is that right?
I would prefer not. And so I can work through this and continue to cut it until I get it to the size I want. Or I can take what I call blanched garlic, which I take this whole clove and put it into cold water, bring it up to a boil, strain it, cold water again, and do that process 3 total times. And what I'm left with is a garlic clove that is much softer. And so with just even your finger or your knife, you can beautifully just paste it.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And this garlic paste will work much more consistently into sauces or in a marinade for something. It won't be poking out and more likely to burn. Just more consistent use in whatever you put it into.
That's very great. Now, what do you do if they say brown your garlic, or a lot of recipes say that?
Yeah, garlic cooks so quickly. So if you're cooking it with a lot of other vegetables, like if I'm going to add it to my mirepoix vegetables, I'm always going to add it at the end because it cooks so quickly. It's going to burn before this. Because it's such a smaller size, less heat is going to take. It's going to take less heat to cook it.
And you do the same with this as you would this?
Exactly. It would just be much more effort. This also has a lot of that bitter, just resonating flavor that garlic leaves that you might taste a day later. So with every blanching cycle...
We've all had those garlic breath days, right?
Yeah. And so to remove that, blanching removes that bitter aspect, and so we don't taste that garlic as much, and it's not the only thing on the plate we taste.
Oh, that's really great. So if you're a little bit worried about garlic and maybe it's date night...
Exactly.
Right? This is a great way to go about it and still get that flavor and the health benefits. So garlic is really healthy. Dr. Jennifer has told us a lot about the antioxidants that are in the garlic, as well as the onions, and so those are good ways to kind of get that in there without really walking around with garlic bread.
Totally. Yeah. Always smash your garlic, though. Always
smash your garlic. If you get your aggressions out that way?
Yeah, well, so it breaks open the allicin that's present inside of the garlic, and allicin is really good for you.
Okay, well, say more about that. It breaks up the...
Allicin?
Okay, allicin.
Yeah,
allicin in garlic.
Yes, there is. So it's not exposed or brought into the present being with the food unless it is actually smudged or mashed. So there's more benefit to just actually pressing down on your garlic than just removing the skin.
Oh, even if it was like this?
Exactly, yeah.
Even if if you didn't blanch it, you should still smush it.
So like if I'm pickling some sort of hot sauce or even making pickles with dill, I want to take that garlic and make sure that flavor's in there, but I also want to include that allicin in there, and so I'm going to smash that garlic with my hand or a knife, whatever, and that's going to go into the jar instead of just the whole clove.
Gotcha. Okay, good. All right, so we've got onions. We now know how to cut onions and garlic, and then you were going to show us about vegetables, but before we move away from the knife skills,
Yes.
Because that seems pretty important.
Yes.
Tell us about what is this?
A honing rod
This
or a
device.
honing steel.
Okay.
So, this is a honing rod. Most people have them in their homes. They're part of their knife block. Most people know that they need to use this. There is a common misconception that it sharpens. What it does is it straightens the edge of your knife. This is something you should be using every time before you go to use your knife. Every single day. As we move our knife on the cutting board through different vegetables,
I'm stepping back.
at a molecular level, we're pushing the steel one way or the other, and the blade's not straight anymore. So, every day, as soon as my knife comes out of my bag, I take my honing rod. I like to stick it on a towel. A lot of the times you see people swiping it like this. You can do it that way. It's a lot less safe, a lot less precise. This way, my knife, or my steel stays where I want it to. And then slowly, just dragging the edge of my knife down the length of the rod using the whole length of it so that I don't wear out any specific side.
And you're not pressing very hard on that either.
It does not take a lot of pressure.
Yeah. He's barely touching the knife to the honing rod.
Correct.
Wow.
And it's not that important that you do it a whole bunch of times or how many times you do it, just making sure that you do it the same amount on both sides so that it stays straight. Sharpening your knife, definitely an important thing, but it only really needs to be done only a couple of times a year, and I recommend that you just take your knife to a place that does it and have it done by a professional.
Okay, so but what about those things that sit on your counter and you stick your knife in it and you run it through like that?
I think that does a lot more harm to your knife actually than it does help.
Ah.
And that
okay,
a honing
so if we have
rod,
one of those, we don't want to
use a honing rod, and that will keep your knife seeming sharp to you a lot longer than you would beforehand. A lot of people don't use a honing rod every day and they think their knife's not sharp, but it's just not straight. And so it doesn't cut the way it's meant to. And so they think that they need to sharpen it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Very good. So we learned something else, and very important when you're trying to be in your kitchen and cook, because one of the things that gets people frustrated, I think, about cooking healthy is it takes so long.
Right.
And so this kind of thing can really help you cut down on that time, because if you're cutting efficiently, it doesn't take as long.
That's where people stop with vegetables, is because it takes work to process, but practicing with a knife becomes enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's something that you can be proud of.
Well, thanks for teaching us that.
Of course.
We're going to move on to vegetables, is that
Yes.
right? You've got a asparagus here.
Yeah.
And tell us, you have a special secret.
So I talked about blanching with garlic, but I think blanching is just paramount when it comes to being thoughtful and smart about how you cook your vegetables. So a lot of people tend to just put a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt, or maybe nothing on their vegetables and just toss into a 400-degree oven and wait until it looks the way that they want.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, most people I did that for so long. And I ended up with black, stringy asparagus every single time. And I ate it and I thought it was fine, but now, knowing about blanching, I don't do it any other way. I honestly blanch all of my vegetables before I cook them in any other manner. So blanching really is just hot, salted, boiling water.
Okay.
So we're gonna take this asparagus here. When it comes to processing asparagus, you wanna take, if you have a bunch of it, you can just take one piece, and you wanna just naturally give it some bend, and it'll break where it's going to be woody. And so to get the best tasting asparagus without that woody bit, we're just gonna cut one to find out where it stops and then process all of them in that manner.
Do all of them like
Exactly. Make it a little bit quicker on ourselves.
Very good.
Right.
Okay, good.
So then we have some boiling water. We make sure it's well salted.
Now, what if we're trying to stay away from salt?
If you're trying to stay away from salt, then you could just not put salt in there.
And it doesn't change it.
So the salt does help with a little bit of the color retention, which is kind of what we're going for here, but it's not imperative. If you're staying away from salt, then stay away from salt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna drop our asparagus in, and really what we're looking to see happen is just to see a color change. So for it to go from that more dull green to a really bright and beautiful green.
Bright. How long does it take, do you think?
Honestly, about 30 seconds to 45 seconds.
Okay.
Really quick.
Okay.
And by that time, it will actually be cooked. So we can see on top, it's much beautiful, much darker, and stronger green. So at this point, I'm gonna take them out.
Yeah, you think you are. This is like fishing right there.
It is.
Okay.
And we're gonna drop them right into some very cold ice water. So I just have a strainer on top just so it keeps all the ice from getting in my vegetables. But this is just to cool them down immediately so they don't continue to cook and overcook.
Okay.
that won't take very long after that. But
They're beautiful. Nice and bright green.
I wish I didn't cut all the asparagus, but we can see the difference from the original stem color to what it looks like now.
Yeah.
So it's just much more lovely to look at as well. And as soon as we have this done, I mean, we can see it's got a little bend to it. And so it is cooked, it's not still raw, but it still has that snap that we want, and it's not so mush.
Yeah,
and now,
it's nice and crispy.
We know that it's cooked, so now we just want to get some color on it. So we can saute it, we can put it into an oven, we can put it into a broiler. So I have our broiler on right now. And I like to heat up my oven or my broiler with the pan in it already.
Oh, okay. So your pan is hot. You got a hot pan
already. As soon as I drop it in, the asparagus will start to cook.
And you didn't put any oil or anything on there.
So you don't need it. I think it's a good idea to put a little bit of oil and salt on there, but I'm going to show you that you can stay away from it and you'll still have really pretty vegetables.
So that's very healthy. If you can just blanch it and put it in your oven without any oil.
You're going to miss out on a little bit of the flavor, and I think oil helps a lot of the times with getting crisp on the outside, but certainly you don't have to use it.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you are in your health. And
exactly.
If you're trying to avoid the fat, maybe you can go without oil.
Yeah, I mean, as a chef, I'm focused most on putting the best tasting food on the plate at the compromise of health per se sometimes. But with that said, I'm still conscious about it, and this is some way that you can certainly be aware of that.
Well, and I think that's a good point. You know, when you go to a restaurant, they're making sure that everything's really flavorful. But that's every once in a while. When you're at home cooking every day, I think that's when you want to look at the health benefits over time. Absolutely. You know, a restaurant's a real treat. I'm sure we eat your food. It's really tasty. Absolutely. And so, but at home maybe we can modify that. Absolutely. For our health needs. So I think that's great. Is it done yet, or are we waiting for asparagus? I don't know. I wanted to taste it. So, I think these are good tips. And again, what we're really trying to do is help you be able to do these recipes and cook with the skills you need. I learned something here today that I think will help us in the kitchen and save some time. Ooh, those look great.
Not much color on it, but a little bit. But
I see.
While it's hot, why don't you go ahead and try it?
Yeah.
More, I'm curious about the texture of it and how it eats. Should be soft, not stringy.
Not stringy at all, and it's really flavorful. Really flavorful.
Really
sweet almost.
The less cooking and heat you can expose it to, the more nutrients you're going to keep present in it.
I like asparagus.
So, outside of steaming, blanching is certainly one of the most nutrient preservation or preservative ways to go.
Which is a good thing to do too. It preserves your nutrients here, so it's really great. So I think this has been good. You were also telling me that sometimes you, in your meal prep, you can blanch everything ahead.
Exactly. So I blanch everything ahead, shock it in an ice bath, take it out. You can store it however you please, just in a closed plastic container, whatever. Yeah. And then go to it whenever you need it throughout the week. It'll last for a week after it's blanched. And all it will take is a couple minutes of cooking if you want to have stir fry. But all your vegetables ready, turn on a hot pan, throw in whatever spices and seasoning you need, and your vegetables will be cooked and brown and beautiful in a matter of 2 minutes.
I think it's great. I think this is really helpful. I don't know if you guys have any more questions out there, but I think this is one of the more helpful tips we've been able to give you, because it'll save you time and help you eat healthy. So really, we'll come back next week, and again, we're going to talk about that recipe for prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia, and we're going to do that next Friday. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we're going to sign off here from the Cook Street School of Culinary Arts, and thank you so much, Chef Sam.
Thank you.
You are the best.
Appreciate it.
We learned a lot.
Happy to hear it.